Welcome in, welcome back, welcome all. Said it, it's been so long since I introed. I think I put it in the wrong order. But we're into episode 18 of the Like That podcast with your hosts as always, Nico, Nick, Brooklyn. Guys, a little bit of a week off. Did it feel weird?
You could say so, especially in my case, as I'm just in a completely different background now.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you'd go first because, if you actually watch the episodes, Nick's got a whole new backdrop now behind him, and it's all green screen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's all
um,
fake.
With all the money he's
no,
made
do we
from this
feel?
podcast, he was able to buy a mansion.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
what happens
I
when your
live
unit
in
ties to
a
$100.
25,000 square mansion. No. Um, no, I moved. I'm actually now living alone. Very excited. Still close to
Leaks
home
his
though,
whole his
so it's
leaks
not
his
too
whole
far.
address by accident.
Yeah, if you guys want to come visit, I live at. No, I'm joking.
How are we? I mean, the week off, I think that gave us a chance to look at the Pro Bowl, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But other than that, nothing too crazy, nothing too new.
I think look is a good point because I at no point had any interest in turning it on.
It's about all I did yesterday as well. I put it on for a minute.
I didn't even look. Couldn't even ask me what channel it was.
Right.
But you saw some crazier things with the Pro Bowl. I mean, Shadur obviously getting a selection there was a little absurd. Shout out the Bengals for having two Pro Bowl quarterbacks. That's never happened in the NFL. And Joe Flacco, Joe Burrow, both were Pro Bowlers. Um, but yeah, outside of that, I mean, the day that we're recording a little bit earlier than normal, and the NBA trade deadline has just been going insane. We saw Jared McCain get moved. We saw Anthony Davis get moved. Kobe White literally right before we just started recording, and those are things that we're gonna go a little bit more in detail after the Super Bowl ends. Gonna transition more into hoops there, but it I want to talk about it so much, but it's literally Super Bowl week, so we gotta change our priorities.
I was kind of just like shocked that you're like, yeah, trade deadline's happening, and you open up with Jared McCain when Anthony
Yeah.
Davis happened today. I was like, oh yeah, Kobe White,
James Harden
Jared
yesterday.
McCain, and James Harden, and then
Giannis could
also
be on the move.
Anthony Davis. Yeah, that's the one we're all waiting
Nikola
on. But yeah,
Vucevic.
Jaron Jackson
back to the
Jr.
task at hand. Oh, that was big.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're excited. We're waiting, but give us a couple weeks, and then we're gonna be fully into the off the gridiron onto the court. But again, 2 weeks. Gotta go back a little bit here. Let's talk about the AFC Championship, NFC Championship recaps. In total, pretty average. Like if you combined all three of us, we actually just hit at a complete 500 rate. Spreads. Brooklyn and I went 2-0, both taking Denver just barely covering. I mean, I don't want to say I'm a wizard here, but I called that game script. And then Seattle moving to the Super Bowl as well. We got a 2014 rematch, or 2015, excuse me. Nick, unfortunately, on the inverse side, going 0 for 2 on spreads. But then when you look at the props, Nick and I both finishing 3-3, Brooklyn 2-4. The funny thing about my 3-3 is I went 0 for 3 in the Patriots game, and then 3 for 3 in the Rams Seahawks games. Any reactions to those? I mean, I know the AFC game, we saw a lot of bad weather and some pretty ugly offensive football. And then kind of the inverse for the NFC. You saw a lot more points than I think people originally expected, even though I did take the over in that, which was hot. But initial, any thoughts about the games, guys?
No, I mean mostly on my end. The Patriots Broncos game would have been a much different game if that weather didn't just drastically change in the third quarter. I like how during the broadcast they showed like how like just instantaneous it was like light flurries to all of a sudden like major snowstorm. But that hit everywhere on the East Coast. I mean, we all got hit pretty hard that day too. But I mean, as a Pats fan, no matter what, even with the 10-7 final score, that game is still pretty nerve-wracking. And yeah, that Seahawks Rams game sucks because I was so high on the Rams, and I mean they were making that little bit of a comeback towards the end of the game. But I mean, overall, that's what you wanted in a conference championship game, playoff game. I mean, two teams gunning it out, and I mean, yeah, credit to Seattle. I mean, they really made me eat my words with that defense. So
Um, I think the Pats game, like I heard so many opinions of like, this is why we need to have domes for most teams, but I like the same thing about like the Bills, and this is kind of the atmosphere that makes it all become something that you gotta expect it when you're playing in any NFL game, right? And that weather's just going to be a part of the experience. So obviously that snow played a big role. Drake May didn't even cross 100 yards passing, and Andre Stevenson had 25 carries in that. But I didn't really think the Pats were gonna like have too much of an issue coming out on top. Nevertheless, though, the Broncos putting up the first touchdown of that game with Stidham throwing it to Cortland Sutton was something that kind of shocked me, but I guess the low scoring affair of that game wasn't too crazy in my opinion. Seattle, Los Angeles, I didn't expect Darnold to turn it up like that. I mean, I know we've been seeing him play pretty stellar all year, but like if you listen to Tom Brady in that broadcast, even Tom was like, this is one of the best starts we've seen from Darnold in literally their biggest game. So, well, not yet, but at that point, their biggest game. So kind of surprising to see Darnold play so well, and JSN absolutely imploded there. And obviously the Rams had some defensive issues. I think it's been a really weird story on both sides. The Pats playing really good defenses, and having some ball or control issues there, and then the Rams, or not, sorry, not the Rams, the Seahawks playing some mid defenses, and it's just been a weird two-tailed story. But here we are.
Yeah, no, I mean, I inherently agree. I think there's an argument to be made that if the weather doesn't get that bad in Denver, maybe we see Jarrett Stidham in the Super Bowl. I mean, I know obviously the weather affects both sides of the ball, but I think that first half, if you are a Patriots fan, you were worried that this might be the last game of the year. But entertaining nonetheless. The weather, you saw a couple missed field goals by both sides. It came down to the wire there. And I probably should have talked about this, or probably should have started with the head coaching decisions before we went into the recaps. I guess it would have been a little bit more fluid that way. But before we jump into the Super Bowl, I think it is worth keeping our discussion going on some of the new hires around the league. Not going to go too far in depth, just kind of emphasize one that we think was either really good or really bad. But since we've last recorded, we've seen, in no particular order, Mike LaFleur getting the head coaching job in Arizona. You saw Joe Brady get promoted from OC in Buffalo to now the head coach. Mike McCarthy making his return as a head coach now in Pittsburgh. Todd Monken staying in Cleveland, now getting promoted to the head coach. Clint Kubiak, I think a very big one here, going from the offensive coordinator with Seattle, of course, to the Raiders. And Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator in LA, going to Baltimore now as the head coach. For me, the one that I really wanted to talk about is the Mike McCarthy hire in Pittsburgh. Arthur Smith's gone. He's going to Ohio State, so you're going to see a little bit of a different offense there. But I don't know what you guys think of Mike McCarthy, but I think his well-established idea of him is that he's an offensive-minded head coach. He won a Super Bowl with Rodgers in the past, and then he went to the Cowboys. But when you look at those Cowboys teams specifically, they had a top 5 offense through EPA before McCarthy got there. He gets there, they drop down to 12. And they kind of stayed around that point through his time as a head coach. And then after they leave, they bring in a kind of an unknown name as a head coach, and the offense immediately picked up where it left off when McCarthy wasn't there. So for me, I think it's weird that McCarthy gets brought into a Pittsburgh team to kind of give them like a fresh face, someone that can really help out the offense. But I don't think there's really much difference offensively between him and Tomlin. So if I was a Steelers fan, I'd be pretty upset.
I mean, when it comes to the Tomlin stepping away, only so much can be kind of said about who made that decision first. I understand when the coach says they're stepping down, it might be kind of a easy way of letting them go. But I think that when Steelers were looking around, I mean, I guess Kubiak was still very much on the table there. There wasn't a lot of the top talent was already gone. And I guess it's a really weird turn back the clock moment now if you try to get Unc Rodgers back with his same head coach he won a Super Bowl with. It's kind of cool, but having an offensive-minded head coach, we'll just see if Rodgers can, if he sticks around, which assuming he is, but just kind of what they pair his weapons up with. I think they have a lot to adjust now in that receiving room. I think DK, as good as he can be, so underperformed so badly this year. So we'll see how this goes. I think that Steelers defense has always been something that's good enough, but that offense has to really pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go too in depth because Brooklyn kind of touched upon everything that I was going to say. I mean, I feel like this was kind of a more so hire, none to say, to get Rodgers to kind of stay because they don't even know if he's coming back this season, if he's going to play another year. This is kind of the front office trying to sway him to maybe come back because I mean, the Steelers don't really have another backup quarterback plan. They don't really have they still have Mason Rudolph, I'm pretty sure, but they don't really have a plan. But I mean, all sense hiring wise, I mean, I don't like it. He also just kind of had a bad reputation when he was down in Dallas. He got a lot of scrutiny down there. And then it drove him out of the league. I mean, if you're DK Metcalf, you're probably pretty excited because again, offensive driven. I mean, this is a team that their second string running back was their leading receiver towards the end of the season. So a lot needed to be made on the offense. I think that's what's going to happen when he gets in there, and especially if Rodgers stays. But I mean, overall, it's kind of just a mid signing, in my opinion.
Yeah, old-minded head coach with not much talent on that offense, with maybe like Brooklyn says an old Rodgers. I'm not excited if I'm Pittsburgh. But what about you guys? What caught your eye?
Well, yeah, obviously can't turn back the clock too much. Going Joe Brady here, like I've got, of course, me being a Bills fan, there's a lot for me to like to think about. I'm not gonna, keep it too long here. I think that the way that the Bills handled the press, and specifically Pagula and the Bean press conference right after the firing of McDermott, was handled horribly. And honestly, I think the media is what blew it up to make the Bills look much worse than they currently do. I think Brady being upgraded to a head coach is very questionable. That they just rebuilt from the house, but I kind of don't hate it, right? Like you think about the plays that were called, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of short things. When you got a guy like Josh Allen with his arm, and you kind of think about how much of that, with McDermott being the head coach, how much of that play calling was dictated by McDermott and what he wanted that offense to look like. I think Joe Brady had a great press conference coming in and saying now, like, he's not just the head coach, he's not just the play caller, but like, or not just the play caller, but he is the head coach. He's here to be on both the offensive side, but also, be very active with the defense and be like, he's going to get in his own offense's face and be happy when Josh Allen gets sacked because that's the defense stepping up. And that's something I think the Bills taking a whole rebrand entirely is something that's kind of exciting. So I think there's a lot to look forward to for Buffalo to see kind of what the Joe Brady offense is going to look like when you do have all those weapons that they do have. I think they need to go out and find a receiver to pair up with Josh Allen. Shakir really just isn't enough. But I'm also very interested to see what that scheme looks like on defense.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the whole McDermott firing situation was just interesting in general. I mean, they let him go. Not even a week later, they promote in house. And then when you see some of the names that like Nico already mentioned, like these guys were still not signed anywhere. So it was also just kind of interesting that they weren't like interviewing. I mean, they interviewed Philip Rivers, which was so random. So I just thought it was interesting. I don't hate the signing. I mean, it's definitely it's if Allen had any say in it, he's probably prefers this. I mean, it's probably gonna this offense is definitely gonna look not subpar like it did this past season, especially if you have a guy in house that was already running it. I mean, it's gonna change things, but I, I just think the whole way that it was handled, it definitely brings some questions heading into the season and what they're gonna do in the off season to kind of prepare.
Yeah, I'm kind of with the public on this hiring that I'm not the biggest fan. You mentioned how it's like yeah like clearing house. Like I relate this a lot in ways to when Belichick left New England. It's like oh it's time to get a new era of Patriots football, right? And the guy you promote is someone that's just been in house with Belichick. And it's like Joe Brady's been there for a while under McDermott, and McDermott is all time rankings. He's like up in the top 10 in win percentage just as a head coach. And I know the playoff success hasn't been there, but I think that it's weird to go a different route when your head coach has been so successful and you decide to just keep it in house.
Hmm, I
Yeah,
agree.
it's definitely weird to think about, like just the reasons still for firing McDermott of just like I felt the energy in the locker room. Like Pagula really screwed up the whole image of that front office from just the jump of him being included in that press conference. But like I said, I think there's a lot to look forward to and a complete rebrand of how the Bills are going to be playing, both defensively and especially now offensively, with the guy who's kind of responsible for, well, not responsible for Josh Allen's development, but a completely new offensive-minded head coach now calling the plays entirely how he wants it. So I'm excited to see how it changes. There's really nothing else you can do but hope for the best at this point.
I personally wanted to talk about Jesse Minter, the DC from the Chargers going down to Baltimore. Now, if you follow our socials, I actually already kind of talked about this a little bit. But I think this is huge for the Ravens. I think this is a much needed signing for this Ravens team, especially this defense. I mean, this is a DC that when he was with the Chargers the last 2 years, they were ranked top 10 in like 5 defensive categories, points per play, yards per play, all that stuff. So it's definitely a much needed addition, I think. And this Ravens defense, they have some key pieces. They have Kyle Hamilton. They still have Roquan Smith. And offensively, I don't really think it's going to take a hit because you still have Lamar Jackson, you still have Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers is still developing. Well, not necessarily still, but he's still pretty young. I like this signing. I think it's really good, especially in the division that we saw this past season that was kind of mid. I mean, I don't know. I just think if you're a Baltimore fan, if you're especially Lamar Jackson, you're excited for this. You're excited that the defense is going to, get that extra step that it needs, especially heading into this offseason.
Yeah, I think that Baltimore's biggest problem, like you said, was the defense. They won games with Tyler Huntley out there, and it's just the defense. And they again credit the Baltimore roster for getting pretty beat up this year. But yeah, defensively, this was a team that for a majority of the year was in the bottom 10, if not bottom 5. And you bring in a guy that just is like a defensive-minded head coach. That's going to at least change a lot on the other side of the ball. And like you said, when you've got all pros on your offense, it's pretty easy to manage that.
Yeah, there's nothing that too much is worrisome that screams out to me like on the Baltimore roster, aside from how, banged up that defense did look. Obviously, that is going to take a toll on what your team looks like throughout the season, and Lamar being out for a portion of it, and then just really not getting back to playing like his former self, made the Ravens to me, and I think we said it a lot in the previous episodes, look worse than they really are. You got guys like Derrick Henry, you got guys like Zay Flowers. You still have Mark Andrews, and Isaiah Likely's a fine replacement, even if Mark Andrews ends up taking a back seat sometime. And yeah, you got Lamar Jackson. Like offensively, not too much to worry about. Defensively, as long as they stay healthy, I think the Ravens are a much better team next year. And you didn't really get too much of a downgrade from Harbaugh, in my opinion.
Let's get into the Super Bowl. If only we had. I should have
I'd be
had.
so mad that we didn't talk about Clint Kubiak because that in and of its own right is a big thing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
an
that's
exciting one.
huge.
I think
Yeah.
some other ones that like I didn't want to spend so much time on it, but like I think Brian Daboll going to Tennessee.
I think Daboll is cool because you saw him how he is responsible a lot for what Josh Allen is now. Now he gets to work with Cam Ward. I think that'd be cool development wise.
Yeah, Tennessee's
And with Salah there
building.
too.
And then
It's pretty cool.
San Francisco loses Robert Saleh, and you bring in Raheem Morris, a guy that used to work with Shanahan, another defensive-minded guy. Like I think those were two big coordinating hires. But yeah, let's get into Super Bowl. I wish I had a little sound for Super Bowl, but I did not hit up the soundboard guy for that. Line is at -4.5 in favor of Seattle. We got a total of 45.5, and I found some numbers here that I think are rate stats going through some history here. But so far in this playoff run specifically, we saw the 4 teams in the AFC and NFC matchups. Those were all favorites from the previous round, and then the favorites went into the Super Bowl. So you're seeing favorites right now hitting at a 6-0 rate over the last 6 games. If we go further, since 2004, underdogs in the Super Bowl are 15-7 against the spread, including on a 5-game cover streak, winning 3 of those outright. If you want to even go even farther back, if you go to the last 30 years, there have been 16 Super Bowls with a line of 4.5 or more. Underdogs are 12-2-2 against the spread, and winning 7 of those outright. So some interesting numbers here favoring the Patriots, but to that same point, there have been 4 teams to make the Super Bowl with odds of 80-1 or higher. Patriots being the 4th one. There have been 7 that made it to the championship round, only 4 advanced, and we've only seen 1 team win. That was the 1999 Rams. Most recent examples are the 2021 Bengals and the 2016 Falcons. And the Patriots did not cover in the championship round. Teams to not cover in advance are 4-10 straight up in the last 14. Seattle has 70% of the tickets right now. Usually fading the public has been the way to go. I'd argue Seattle is healthier, obviously without Charbonnet, but at the same time, Ken Walker's kind of picked up that pace. And rumors just earlier this week have showed that Drake May might have something going on with his shoulder. I know they ruled him out on Thursday's practice because they said it was an illness. But you look back, there's like one slide from the Denver game where he kind of came up a little bit short, and he hasn't been playing prolific to begin with. I mean, his EPA in the playoffs is right there with Justin Fields when he was a starting quarterback. So the offense has not been good for New England. They've only allowed 3 touchdowns in the playoffs. Meanwhile, that Rams game was close, but the defense showed up when it needed to, and that's been their biggest, it's been their biggest roadblock so far in the playoffs. So public's on Seattle. Some historical data favors New England, but I want to hear what you guys think.
I'll open this up, Nick, because me being really the only person, I think, and rightfully so. You guys are both Pats fans. You made it this far. You might as well, preach for your Pats as much as possible. But as much as the New York v Massachusetts sports rivalry is always going to be a thing, I genuinely think the Seahawks are a better team. Now, quarterback MVP voting aside, like Nico just touched upon, May has not really looked, I would say, too great in this whole postseason. That defense has shown up so many times in these games recently. We saw with the Stroud Aster class, we saw with Justin Herbert. Granted, that O-line is what it is. And then against Denver, granted, the weather also played a factor. Again, very weird road that the Pats have had to kind of make it this far. And I don't think that Drake May's postseason play has necessarily impressed me to the point where Sam Darnold's postseason play has been very impressive for a guy that we keep saying, like, wait, Sam Darnold's going to make the Super Bowl. I think it's a little bit disrespectful at this point to see the season he's had in the last 2 years and now this year in Seattle.
That's that upstate New York Wi-Fi. See if he comes back here.
Just gone. We'll see.
That's just on the offenses. Oh, did I just get really choppy?
We just missed
you just completely froze.
Yeah, we just like.
What was the last thing you heard me say?
I don't know, but you were just like frozen, and then me and Nico were just sitting here in silence for like 10 seconds.
You were
What was
speaking
the last thing you
you
heard
were
from me?
speaking on Darnold's success, how he shouldn't be called out, like it shouldn't be a surprise that he's here.
You're saying,
his last
yeah.
2 years have been great.
I'm not going to
It's
say that
disrespectful.
I'm not going to say that you shouldn't be surprised that Darnold is in the Super Bowl, but I think it's time that he gets a little bit more respect for what he's done in the last 2 years. And like obviously you have guys like Jez and you have guys like JSN who really make that offense a lot more dangerous when you have a competent quarterback. But like this is what you didn't miss. Or this is what you did miss, and this is actually my biggest point, is that this is, to me, the first time that the Patriots are playing a competent offense in this postseason. Not just a competent offense, but you have one of the most dangerous receivers. You have probably the most dangerous receiver in this year in JSN now going against that Pats defense, which in its own right has been, everything that the Patriots needed to get through these games. So I think that this is a game right now where they finally play against a defense. Well, no, not a defense, but they finally play against an offense that can go toe-to-toe with them in every single way and possibly is a bit more threatening than I think the Pats' offense is. So I have Seattle, coming on top of this one. Both teams are within the top 5 of least points per game allowed defensively. So it should be a real slow first half, and I'll talk about that more in a minute, but I think the Seahawks come out of this one. I think the spread's a little dangerous, but I would take them to cover spread here, not unless it moves up another point.
I've been rolling with my Pats all postseason, even with the L's in the spreadsheet. It doesn't matter. They're in the bowl. But I'm still rolling with them against Seattle at 4.5. I like 4.5. I'm pretty sure they opened up at 3.5, so the line shifted. Yeah, I mean, the Drake May postseason hasn't really been the best thing to watch. Then again, we are talking about a second-year quarterback, first full season starting. He's had some mistakes. He's had a lot of issues holding on to the football. Granted, those turnovers really weren't able to result in anything drastic for them. But yeah, kind of on Brooklyn's point, the defense has been lights out, and I think that's kind of the driving force that's going to be going into this game against Seattle. I really don't think people, as good as Seattle's offense has been this postseason, especially with dropping 40 points on San Fran, who has had a terrible defense since all those injuries began with. I really think people should keep in mind about how good this Patriots defense really is, especially with Milton Williams coming in fully healthy. I mean, Charbonnet being out is really a big factor heading into this game because if Ken Walker gets shut down in the run game, who else are you going to have? That's going to force Sam Darnold to throw it. And it's really, a lot of the narrative kind of last week was that this is Sam Darnold's biggest game of his career, and then he won. Now this is his biggest game of his career. So I think a lot of pressure is more on Darnold than necessarily May. I mean, May's had an MVP season, don't get me wrong, but this is a second-year quarterback that's kind of went above expectations. This is a team that exceeded expectations. This is a team that going into the season was only favored to win 8 games, 8.5, and they finished with 14. So for that, I don't see why they don't have any chance to not win the whole thing. This offense has been lights out all season. They've averaged 28 points per game. I think this is the best test that they're going to have going up against a top 3 defense. But with Drake May, I know the shoulder injury is kind of an issue, but they have 2 weeks off. I think that's a huge help. I think Mike Rabel leading this team into the Super Bowl is also a huge advantage. I love Rabel. I think he's really shifted this locker room around, and he's made this team believe. And this is not that much of a different roster offensively, other than the addition of Diggs from last year. And they're doing things that they weren't able to do last year. So I'm rolling with my guys. I'm rolling with the Patriots. I think it's going to be a really, really good Super Bowl. I think it's going to be a slow start kind of with Brooklyn. I think both teams are going to try to figure each other out just about how good these two defenses are. But I'm rolling with the pass and Drake May to hoist the Lombardi at the end of the night. Hopefully. Hopefully.
I'm also on New England to cover the spread here. I think that the offense has looked bad this playoff run, but when you look at these two teams, I think the Patriots match up surprisingly well on the defensive side of the ball. You have Christian Gonzalez against JSN, which is going to be my favorite thing to watch in the Super Bowl. And on top of that, like when you talk about the big playmakers on the Seattle offense, it's JSN and it's through the running backs. And I've talked about it in the Houston matchup that with Milton Williams and that D line, they've done really well against the run. So if Seattle can't necessarily establish the run and they're having a hard time targeting JSN, it has to be through the tight ends at that point. You might see some crazy Shaheed play there, but I think overall, I think the Patriots defense really does match up well for the Seattle offense. To me, I think the worry is going to be on the offensive side for the Patriots. You know, that O-line has shown its weaknesses in this playoff run, and that Seattle defensive line is nothing to be discredited for. But again, to give credit to New England, Houston #1 defense in EPA, Denver, a team that was #1 in defensive EPA for most of the year, and Seattle, what people are talking about is the best defense in the NFC. So you want to talk about a road through hell? I mean, that's what this New England team is facing in the playoffs. The only team ever to go undefeated on the road in a full season. You're talking 9-0. So I think that if without weather conditions, I think that this is going to be a good game for the Patriots. I think it's not going to be a very high scoring Super Bowl. I think you're going to maybe see these teams struggle. I mean, both quarterbacks, their odds for interceptions. I know Darnold is like -136. May is like -150. So I think this is going to be a battle of the defenses, but I think New England comes out on top here. I'm going to take their spread, but I booked their money line last week.
As you should.
Yeah,
as you should.
I did as well.
You guys are both Pats fans.
to.
You made it this far, and I'm not gonna let any bias or any way how I feel about Massachusetts sports flow into it. Like this is again, no matter how you want to spin it, this is the two best teams in the NFL at this point this season. You know, they made it this far. But I think that Seattle has a little bit more to that offense, and it's weird to say that because you just see it come out of JSN, right? But you also see Ken Walker, who's able to put up some yardage, big yardage when it comes to the pass game. So I don't think he's going to have nearly as aggressive run game, which we'll also talk about in a moment. But they got playmakers, random playmakers. We saw it with Torrey Horton all year. Jake Bobo had a touchdown against the Rams, and also Cooper Kupp getting involved too. I just think that there's a lot of routes where, especially with that prolific offense and how it's all been drawn up and how they've been flowing, where the Pats might have a little bit on their hands, a little bit too much to, you really don't know which guy you got to keep an eye on because Rashid Shaheed will burn you. Cooper Kupp will make plays. Ken Walker is a guy you do have to watch, and of course you're gonna have everything full with JSN, who has just been the focal point of it. AJ Barner, wouldn't be surprised if he gets a touchdown too. So again, battle of the defenses, but I think Seattle has a couple more routes to victory there.
I saw something on Instagram that could just be complete mind games from Cooper Kupp, but he posted earlier this week of him in practice, and there's one shot of him throwing a football.
Saw that too.
And so, again, maybe it's a mind game, for New England side to see that and be like, are they scheming up, like a little like QB throw? Kupp's done it before. We saw in last Super Bowl, or excuse me, 2 Super Bowls ago, We saw Juwan Jennings throw a pass. If you watch we got a bunch of mini games going up on social media, and we got a question specifically about that included in there. But yeah, I think we could see some trick plays. These are two very interesting OCs, like Clint Kubiak, we just saw, getting a head coaching job, an offense that we talk about that is, just been JSN and the run game, and it's worked. You go into this year, I feel like obviously both these teams have been long shots, but if you're telling me one of the best offenses in the league was run by Sam Darnold, the Seahawks O-line, and, just one receiver, people would be calling you insane, I feel. So, and then you've got McDaniels on the other side, a guy that has always been known as an offensive mastermind, maybe not the qualities of a head coach, but a guy that can scheme up things on the fly. Another thing that I saw earlier today, just doom scrolling, was Tom Brady talking about, I believe it was the last Super Bowl against the Seahawks, where he and McDaniels installed 2 plays 3 days before the Super Bowl, and they ended up scoring on 2 of them. So you're going to see some probably unique things coming out of this Super Bowl, but for me, I do think it's going to be a low-scoring affair.
Yeah, I mean, I think that defensively, this is absolutely the hardest thing this is to me the hardest defense other than the Texans D line that the Pats have had to face, because in just so many ways, like I mean, actually, this is the closest thing to the Texans defense that the Pats have had to face.
I think Denver. I mean, it's not no disrespect to Seattle here. I mean, you're talking about gold, silver, and bronze for defenses, but I would put Denver ahead of Seattle. I don't know how Nick
I don't know if I necessarily
No,
do.
I would definitely put Denver ahead of Seattle.
I think
like-
as we all know, weather played heavily into just what the passing game looked like there, but I think no one was more smothering than Houston, and I think this is one of the closest things that they're going to see to that D line.
But Denver loves sack.
Yeah, but how many times was Drake May sacked in that game?
I can't tell you the number off the top of my head.
And they weren't necessarily playing stupid, right? They weren't
It
trying to
wasn't-
do
it
anything
wasn't
too
pretty.
crazy. But the game itself wasn't pretty. You had Jarrett Stidham in the conference championship. But Seattle is a team that is right around 6th in terms of interception percentage. And if you're talking about a Patriots offense that has its struggles keeping the ball just in possession for them, this could be a game where some of those looks are going to force me to make some questionable throws. So, but I think we have talked about this game a decent amount.
I was just going to say, is there any final thoughts before we jump into props for this game?
I just think at the end of the day, it really depends on which team's going to come in more prepared, which team's going to, obviously. But
me talking to my
I don't know, man.
I'm
excited.
My soccer
I'm just so excited. I didn't even realize that this was Super Bowl 60. Like, it's a brand new, this is the trend. Yeah, it's the 60th year of the Super Bowl.
We got the call. Really cool. I go, Nico. I was like, now it's time to talk about Super Bowl Roman numeral. Genuinely, I keep forgetting which one we're on.
Dude, when we were doing the mini games, I'm looking up oh, what happened in this Super Bowl? And then I'm like, Super Bowl XLVVVI. I'm like, what year is this, dude? Just give me the year.
You guys gotta be locked into Star Wars fans, man. I mean, I know they go up to they only go up to 9, but that's how I understand.
I know I, B, and V. I know everything after V and I, and then the X. But when you get too many in there.
Yeah, you start throwing in random letters just for fun. I'm like, all right, what are we
doing?
Nick just said in the fancy way, I could count 1 to 10 in Roman numerals.
I can write it out for you if you want me to.
But yeah, so unlike last week, we all came with 3 props, and to be completely, honest with you.
Wait, can I click the button?
Yeah, sure.
It's prop time.
Last week we all came with 3, which, when you're asking a group to have 9 individual props for each game, it's a little insane. And I think that shows
in one game.
Yeah, our overall records. So we brought it down. We all came prepared with 2 props that we are very confident in, and not only that, we're going to be taking one for our group, like that Super Bowl parlay, which currently sits at plus 850. But then, just for ha-has, all 3 of us came with a little bit of a riskier prop, one that I'm not going to say I have analytical defense for it, but something that I think is fun and I think could happen. But I'm going to start with my props here. My first one can be Kenneth Walker under 73.5 rushing yards. You've seen me fade running backs against the Patriots all playoffs, and I'm going to continue that. I mean, with Milton Williams, the Pats have only allowed the leading running back on the roster. They've only hit the over twice. Granted, this line is at 73.5, but something that I think that the D line matches up well. And if this is a closer game, or even if the Seahawks end up having to play from behind, there might not be as many rushing opportunities. Other one that I really love is Mac Hollins over 26.5 receiving yards. 82% hit rate in his last 11 games, and in the last 3 games we've seen 19 total targets. Only 2 last week, of course, when you account for that snow, but 2 previous games, 17 targets. That's kind of insane. Also, I don't know if it's known, but I have a cat climbing up my chair right now.
I was gonna ask.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I just
Wow.
heard, shout out somebody.
hello.
Got the dog. It's a whole zoo.
Yeah,
back
I
here.
could do that. Yeah, I was gonna say you literally have a zoo in your room.
I feel like an evil guy in the movies. They get the hat behind them.
Could you get the cat to sit on your head?
No, I'm allergic. That would kill me. So that's as close as that cat's gonna get. But yeah, and then so
that's pretty close. Oh,
and she's out.
There it goes.
So yeah, Kenneth Walker under 73.5 rushing yards. Mac Hollins over 26.5 rushing yards. And my little stupid haha teaser for the Super Bowl is going to be Stephon Diggs as the receiving yards leader in the game. It's at plus 800, which is the second highest odds. JSN is minus 175. I think this one is just pure passion for me. You look at Diggs and his playoff history, and you think of that picture against the Chiefs. He started the trend of standing out there, watching them, watch the confetti fall. And I mean, he's an older receiver. He's the narratives ever since he left Buffalo have always been there, and he hasn't had too many crazy performances this year for the playoffs. I mean, granted, the New England offense hasn't been so crazy, but I think this is a guy that is gonna want to make this his biggest day. So I think there could be a narrative. He's not going to have a deep bomb necessarily, but I think a guy that sits in the intermediate part of the field, bring in six to 8 catches. I almost did it, but 6 to 8.
I know.
And maybe he gets into triple digits. I think plus 800's fun value for that. So yeah, Stephon Diggs as the receiving leader of the game at plus 800.
Nice. I just thought the hesitation was so funny after you go 6.
I almost did it.
I'll go over my props pretty quickly. First off, I have Drake May over 6.5 rush attempts, minus 137 on DraftKings. Not necessarily statistical wise for me. It's more so kind of, this Patriots offense has had to deal with a lot of heavy pressure all of this postseason, and against Seattle, like we touched upon already, it's no different. I also think, especially with this shoulder narrative going into it, if it's actually going to affect Drake May, I see him utilizing his legs a little bit more, which is what, he showed throughout. But 6.5 rush attempts, 7 rush attempts. I like this, especially if the O-line is going to be having difficulty. If Will Campbell can't guard like he hasn't been able to the last few weeks, then I see May having to run around a little bit.
And don't forget the QB kneels. Those could be important.
Right.
If
right.
Pats end up having to, they win the game, he's probably going to get it 2, I would say.
Yep. We don't need yards. We just need rushes. So second one, Ramondre Stevenson, hate to do this as a Pats fan, taking his under 14.5 rush attempts. I think this line's very high just from last week, 25 carries. I mean, a lot of that had to do with weather. I think weather was a big narrative in last week. So, I mean, that's not going to be a factor in this game. I don't see him rushing the ball 15 times. I do think that they're going to at least spread it out with Travion. If it's working, especially if they do have to play from behind, I do see May having to throw the ball. His odds, I'm pretty sure, were also in the minus 120s on DraftKings. It was favored. My far-fetched lay, it's really not that far-fetched. I can share what else I also bet in this game that's pretty far-fetched. I have Drake May 2+ passing touchdowns at plus 122. I only say it's kind of far-fetched just because of how the postseason that he's had. I mean, he's kind of had difficulty throwing the ball, especially that Denver game. That was tough. But in the regular season, out of the 17 games, he had 8 games this season with 2 touchdowns thrown. And to kind of go inside with Nico's Stephon Diggs receiving yards later, I mean, hey, maybe this offense could just start clicking. We never know. We could have kind of a shootout that the Rams Seahawks have had this year. So I'm taking Drake May 2+ passing. I guess for my really big reach, is a prop Nico and I bet early last week was Stephon Diggs to win Super Bowl MVP. Actually, um, I got that at +6,000 odds. It actually went down to +5,000. But yeah, kind of that narrative. I'm pretty sure. I mean, Cooper Kupp was the last receiver to win MVP in 2022. But if we're gonna have the Diggs narrative of him having a big day, especially with the receiving yards leader, why not give him the MVP? Why not? Just to top it off.
I'm all
So
there
we
for
put
that.
$5 on that. Put $5 on that.
Just to top it off.
Why not?
I mean, I don't think your Drake May 2+ is too far fetched with the reasons that Seattle is like one of the best rushing defenses in the league. So if they can get within throwing distance for a touchdown, I wouldn't be overly shocked. And if it happens to go to my reach of a pick, that'd be great. Both of them, right? All right, let's move to me.
That would be the goal.
This
That
is
would be
actually a
ideal.
line. This is a line. If you look at every pick that I've made for all the games, it has involved a tight end getting over 3.5 receptions. And actually that stands for the entirety of the AFC when it came to my pick. Saw it with Kincaid, and we're gonna go 3 times in a row here for Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry over 3.5 receptions, and it was one that did not cover last game, but granted, we saw every single weather difficulty and just nothing really happening in the pass game in general for the Pats. But this time, they got a dome over their heads, and they've had plenty of time to prepare. We talk about, or it gets talked about, that Seattle's defense and how shut down they are against wide receivers, but they don't talk about tight ends for a reason. This is one of the worst defenses when it comes to guarding the tight end position. And, tight ends that tend to go against the Seahawks average almost 9 targets a game. So if you're talking about a Drake May who may have to be using his feet a little bit, we've seen plenty of random big plays come out of Hunter Henry, and I think that this is a game where if he can't find any success from his wideouts, you got to go to the next best option, and it's going to be your big tight end. So I think Hunter Henry sees plenty of volume in this game, especially enough to haul in 4 receptions. Granted, just the fact that the Seahawks are not one of the better tight end covering teams. Moving on to my first half under, something we were talking about earlier.
Really quick before you do that, I just looked back on our posts. This is the 3rd time that we picked Hunter Henry to have over 3.5 catches in the playoffs.
I was just about to say.
I took
Who was
it.
the other person who took it?
I took it
Okay.
Against Houston. You took it against, or actually, excuse me. Yeah, no, I took it against the Chargers. You took it against Denver, and now you're double dipping into the Super Bowl. And if you're wondering, we're 0-2 right now on that.
And you talk about law of averages, right? That's your whole.
Yeah, so you better turn it around.
I think this is the game. This is the last game for him to do so, right? Move on to my second pick. We were talking about pace of play earlier, and Nick highlighted it especially that this is going to be a game where these two offenses are going to be feeling things out the entirety of the first half. I do not really think that this is going to be a game where you're going to see 3 touchdowns in the first half alone. Pat's defense has been shut down in and of its own right, and the Seahawks, again, like I touched upon, are one of the better teams when it comes to interception percentage. And overall, these are 2 of the teams, and I said this earlier, that are within the top 5 of points per game allowed just in general. Seattle is the best defense in terms of points per game, least amount of points per game allowed. Pat's coming right behind it in 4th. I don't expect any fireworks. I expect that first quarter to low-key just be full of 4 and outs, 3 and outs, barely getting to the 50, stuff like that. But even if you take a look at the Pats, the team that scored 3 points in the first quarter of the last 9 Super Bowls, does that set you up for some volume scoring?
Yeah,
No.
I'm not
The biggest game
by accident. I'm just saying, like, yeah.
Does that set you up for some volume scoring? Not entirely. I don't think enough of 3 touchdowns is scored in the first half of the biggest game of the year, especially when both teams that we have talked about so much is just their defense really leading everything. My last pick, my reach, you could call it, and this one, odds-wise, definitely comes in at a reach. Again, targeting the Achilles heel of the Seahawks defense, I'm just going to go right back to Hunter Henry for this one. In a world where May is like, I feel comfortable throwing to Hunter Henry every single time, if the Pats can keep this close, the Pats can score enough volume here, I might just take Hunter Henry to get 2 touchdowns. Plus 1,400 odds there. You want to be weird enough to pair that up with something else that'll boost that into a 2-leg parlay that you put $10 on that. Honey, break out the red panties, we're rich. So
God,
That's
I
not
hope
an
it hits
original
now.
quote.
I hope it hits.
That is-
That's
that
a
is-
quote for the pod forever.
That's a Conor McGregor quote. So don't think I just made that up. So but yeah, Hunter Henry 2+ touchdowns plus 1,400, and my leg that I'm throwing into our group lay here is going to be the under of 22.5. I don't see this game being too crazy. I could even see it being a 10-3 end of first half. But yeah, first half's gonna be plenty of just feeling things out.
Yeah, so if you take, for our Super Bowl lay, I'll take in one of those legs. Mine, the Matt Collins, over 26.5 receiving yards. Nick, Drake May, 2+ passing touchdowns. And Brooklyn's Hunter, or first half under of 22.5. That's your 8+ 850 parlay. And I know I might be a chance that 2 of the 3 of us are hanging out to watch the Super Bowl. That could be exciting. We don't know just yet. But I am
Working on it.
It is going to be. This is the most stressful NFL game that I will be watching. That it's been so long as a Patriots fan. So
Dude, it's been forever. Been so long. I can't tell you the last time that I sat down and watched the Patriots Super Bowl.
now I can show my colors. 1 second.
Were
So,
you doing that on purpose this whole time?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were wearing your hat backwards on purpose.
Oh, it looked back. It's a beanie. I didn't think it could look backwards.
I
Yeah,
had
but you
this.
had the
I had
logo
this remark.
behind you.
Yeah, I thought
I had
maybe,
this remark
maybe
that-
it's just a red beanie.
Dude, I had this remark right after this the Pats beat the Broncos, man. If you're a Boston Celtics, a New England Patriots fan, you've never had a hard sports life. I don't care. You've never seen real struggle in sports. You maybe had a couple seasons where it's not really the best, and the Celtics had rebuilds, and the Pats weren't the best team for a while. But man, how you've seen Massachusetts dominance in sports historically and in the 2000s. Don't want to hear it ever.
Hey, if you're only a Bruins fan,
unless you go on a 3-decade
Only
stretch
a
of never seeing the
Bruins fan.
playoffs. Oh yeah, if
I'm
you're
just
only a
saying,
Bruins fan.
if you're only a Bruins fan, that sucks. You haven't won a
Brad
Stanley Cup in
Marchand.
15 years.
Brad Marchand, it wasn't exciting enough.
Yeah,
And they
I'll-
lost the last time. Yeah, and they lost in a game 7 with a minute left at home.
If you're a hockey fan in Florida, I don't want to hear anything from you.
You guys have made the championship.
right?
The Bruins have made the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. When has any team that I've rooted for made it to the championship of that sport in my lifetime? I am a Brooklyn Nets, a Buffalo Bills fan. You can say I'm a Yankees fan. Yes, I want the Yankees to win, but that's not really baseball is not my thing.
I just wish
Yeah.
we had a
Bruins
we
fans
all
have it so bad. I've had 23 years of not seeing success in my sport.
imagine.
I thought you're a Yankees fan.
Yeah, but I don't I don't follow baseball like that.
Imagine if we had this podcast and we were actually alive to witness the Bills go 0 for 4 in 4 straight Super Bowls.
Oh my
The content we would have on this podcast, I mean, who knows? Maybe Brooklyn wouldn't even be here. Maybe after Super Bowl 3,
Probably
like, you know what, I
not.
can't do this anymore.
Oh no, if I
No.
saw that, I'm covering my ass after 2. I'm like, nah, I'm not possibly eating that take again.
Going into the 4th Super Bowl and you're giving your picks and you're like, it's the Bills. They have to, they can't lose 4 in a row.
Show you guys a bet slip. There's just $1,000 on Bills money line. Just blow it. You just never hear from me again. Yeah.
But yeah,
There's my little rant against Boston sports. The New Yorker in me.
socials, as always, are going to be like that _pod. We dropped a bunch of Super Bowl mini games this week if you haven't seen those. And like I said, I'm so excited for the Super Bowl, and there's going to be a lot more exciting content to come post-football season. But guys, that's all from me. We all we got, we all we need.
Seahawks slogan. I don't know what they said.
Just do your job, all right? We just got to go in. We just got to do our job,
yeah,
as Mike
you're the new
Rabel once
Vrabel.
said.
You're the new Vrabel.